Hello, welcome back. We are the Lorcana Twins, and on this episode, we're going to set sail on the Azurite Sea. And so, what we decided to do this week for our video is that we would each pick a card from all six inks that we're excited about in this upcoming set, and one that we think you could, try to build your deck around, or at least consider including it in a deck that uses that ink type.
Yes, but before we do that, I know in our last episode we predicted which deck would win the Seattle DLC, and I went with Emerald Seal, which was maybe, kind of a safer bet, but it ended up panning out because Wonderland, as he's called, or Luke, ended up winning the whole event with Emerald Seal. So congrats to him, and that was a fun event to watch. There were some really cool decks that came out of that. I know there was an Emerald Amethyst using a 6-cost beast that readies every time one of your characters takes damage, and then they were also using the Mystical Rose and a Bell card. That was a cool combo we really hadn't seen in competitive play.
I love Emerald Amethyst, so that seemed like something fun to try.
Yeah, and then there was a deck where almost half of the cards were locations with Amber Steel, so that was really cool too. And both those decks did very well and made at least top 32. So very cool. But now that meta is kind of behind us, or for us at least, we don't have any big tournaments that have the set 5 meta any longer, and we're only 2 weeks out from Azurite Sea. We thought we would set sail and get right after it. So
for Amber, I believe this is the card that you selected to talk about.
Yep, this is Winnie the Pooh, Honey Pirate. He is a 2-cost uninkable character with 2 strength and 2 willpower. He's a Storyborn Hero Pirate, and he has support. And then he has an ability where pirates, you see, whenever this character quests, you pay 1 less for the next pirate character you play this turn. So, not 100% sure if this will see a lot of competitive play or if it'll be super viable that way or not. That'll remain to be seen. But I think just it's a really cool character, Winnie the Pooh, a classic. Love to see it here. The art's great. It's in amber, which seems pretty fitting for him. Matches his coloration, his honey. And then, if you're planning to build a deck based on pirates, it just seems like a very, obvious inclusion, or at least something to consider. I know the uninkable might hurt it a little bit, but yeah, being able to get pirates out a turn earlier could be pretty big. And there are some very impactful pirates that are already in the game, like Smee, who costs 2, very good stat line. There's some Captain Hooks. But there's a very nice Jim Hawkins in the set that lets you, draw potentially up to 4 pirates off the top of the deck, and he costs 7. So if you're able to get him out early with this, that might really make an impact.
Yeah, I think in Amber so far, like for character-based ramp, the only thing maybe that comes out a turn before this would be Pluto. And what I like about this Pooh instead is if you're going to play a pirate-centric deck, then Pooh has better stats as a 2/2 on turn 2, so he could do some trades. And then the support also helps you trade up with your 1-drop. Mm-hmm. And so I think, if there's some good forecast pirates that you want to include in your deck, using Pooh on turn 2 so that you can use his ability on turn 3 to get out a pirate a turn early.
Yeah, and
it might be the way to maximize your curve.
Cool thing too is his support ability and his We're Pirates You See ability, they work at the same time since he has to quest to get the effect of that, and when he quests you get to use the support. So pretty cool and efficient that way. And yeah, it'll just, if you have room uninkable wise to fit him in there, might be a good inclusion. And I'm sure we'll have fun building decks around the pirate archetype going forward.
Next up we have Naveen's Ukulele. And so this is a 1-cost item in Amber, and it is inkable, and it has the effect Make It Sing. So you can pay 1 ink and banish the item to give chosen character plus 3 cost to sing songs for the turn. So I think this is really cool because it kind of enables you to sing songs you normally otherwise couldn't a little bit earlier. And one thing I think this would combo really interestingly with is the 3-cost Ursula, Deceiver of All in Emerald. So there's some things that you could have her sing, for 6 instead, that could be really interesting just to see what kind of extra value you could get out of this card.
Yeah, if also, she can double sing a song that costs more than the typical 3, like that could be very strong.
Yeah, and then also something to consider is just if you do have some item slots available in your Steel Amber deck, at any point this kind of threatens the fact that you could suddenly sing A Whole New World, or an impactful song with even just your 2-cost character that might not normally be a singer. So if Smee needs to sing Whole New World so you can keep keep your hand going. It's just something they might not expect to see coming. So, and really the cool thing there is, even if you just have a Smee in play, you can pay 2 to get this into play and banish it, and then all of a sudden Smee can just sing Whole New World, on turn 3, and you still have an ink left over. So I think this could make for some explosive combos in Amber Steel.
Absolutely. And now we will move into Amethyst. So I went with Tinkerbell here, Queen of the Azurite Fairies. She costs 7, inkable, and then has 5 strength and 6 willpower with shift 5, so you can potentially get her out for 5 ink instead of the 7 evasive. Now this is a very high statted character to have evasive, and on top of that, 2 lore. So that's really nice. You can safely quest for 2, or if you need to do some challenges, the 5/6 is probably enough to get multiple trades with her. And then she has an ability, Shining Example. Whenever this character quests, your other fairy characters get +1 lore this turn. So I'm really excited to try to build a Floodborn blue fairy deck with this character. I think would be nice if you get the blue fairy down on 2. She's already evasive. So if the opponent doesn't have a good way to deal with her, you can, once this one's out and questing, then the blue fairy would be questing for 2. And when you play this one, you'd be drawing a card, since when you play a Floodborn with the blue fairy in play, you draw a card. And, if you're doing an Amethyst Steel, you could play the other, the Giant Fairy Tinkerbell from set 1. That's, very strong card. And then that's also fits the Floodborn theme of the deck. It'll be cool to see. I definitely am interested in maybe building that color combination first, but there's certainly other ones out there to try. Maybe a morph deck with this in Emerald as well.
I was kind of thinking Emerald might be fun for me. I really like that pairing, but Steel sounds cool too.
And the set 1 Tinkerbell in Emerald that gives any of your characters evasive the turn she comes into play, and is evasive herself. Like, that'd be another shift target. That'd be another, card that helps you maybe deal with some of your opponent's evasives. And I don't know how it'll end up being, but I do really love the idea of building around with it and trying to have fun with it anyway.
And I think this foil will look really cool, just the way all the pixie dust is swirling around, and she's kind of got a glow around her already. So.
Yeah, and she's also a captain, so if you're playing this with Steel and you're playing, let's say, Captain Smee, Mr. Smee, you'll be able to get around his ability that makes him take a damage if you don't have a captain in play at the end of a turn when he's exerted. So just another little synergy there. So yeah, I think there's some real promise with that, and it'll be cool to see once the full set's out if there's any other fairies that haven't been revealed, and just to take a look at that and consider all the options. But yeah, that'll be exciting.
Sticking with, I guess, Peter Pan characters, I went with Peter Pan, Shadowcatcher. He's a 4-cost uninkable, 1/3 Amethyst card, Storyborn hero with 1 lore, and the ability Gotcha. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, exert chosen opposing character. So I think, the stat line is not great for a 4-cost, especially being uninkable. That's definitely a risk, if you want to run this card. However, I think the upside is that every turn, if you're going to continue to ink and just leave your Peter Pan ready, you can threaten to exert whatever characters your opponent is either holding back from you or whatever they're just playing for the turn. This is just a way to say, like, let's say you're playing a Sapphire Amethyst ramp deck and you want to keep inking every turn. Then you can kind of exert whatever they just played and then use your better statted characters to keep the board clear. So even just in a late game setting, this just sitting in play, it constantly threatens your opponent's things that are ready. And so I think that really actually gives you some nice control elements. And then, of course, if you're in a matchup where this isn't going to be overly beneficial, the uninkability will hurt. But I think, maybe having a couple copies of this in a deck that's built out with some nice stats would give you more consistent removal, especially if you pair it with a deck that kind of hurts for removal sometimes, such as Amber, and also Sapphire kind of lack that. So I think
it lets you force the issue. And
I think it'd be good to pair with any of those ink colors and give it a try.
Yeah, I think the repetitive ability to get multiple uses out of the ability
I think that's
where it could really shine.
More potentially playable. But
all right, and then here in Emerald, Goofy, Expert Shipwright. He is a 5-cost inkable character, 1 strength and 4 willpower, so definitely understated for the cost level. But he's a Dreamborn hero inventor with Ward, which has proven to be a very strong keyword lately, especially with characters like Prince John. And that means that, opponents can't choose a character except to challenge. And, a lot of times people just hold their Ward characters upright, so they can't be challenged. But His ability won't really allow for that if you want to get full use, because it's clever design. It says whenever this character quests, chosen character gains ward until the start of your next turn. So this is really cool. Like maybe you quest him and then you can give ward to a character you just played that you think is a high target that they would want to try to remove, maybe with some sort of action or whatever beforehand. But this would allow you to just quest with him, get your 3 lore, which is pretty nice for a 5-cost character. And then he also has wards, so they will have to challenge him if they want to remove him or have some AoE type of effect like a big Sisu coming down. But I think it could be really strong if you had a way to not only quest with him, give another character ward, and then if you could ready him so that you can't he can't be challenged either, then it could really just get a lot of lore without giving your opponent many ways to interact with it. So, and with 3 lore, I mean, that's a pretty big threat. So I think there's a lot of fun potential with this card, and the inventors are becoming a important keyword in this next set, and he has that, and a hero as well. So we'll see what kind of spicy brews people come up with Goofy.
Yeah, I think he could kind of be a top end in an aggressive deck that wants to just play annoying characters that your opponent can't remove right away. And like you said, the next turn you play it down another big lore threat, and then you give it ward by questing with Goofy, and you're getting
at least gets a quest.
And you're getting 3 lore at the same time, and if they don't have any decent stats in play on their side of the board, then they can't remove this with an action. So it's very nice that the ward can continue to protect him.
Yeah, it could be a scary card.
I went with You Came Back.
Ooh, another scary one.
So when I first saw this card, I thought, what I like about it is it just seems like it opens up so many possibilities. Basically, it's a 3-cost uninkable action that says ready chosen character, but there's no stipulations to what you can do with that character after it's been readied. So, if it was dry, it's able to quest, it's able to challenge, it's able to sing. It can just stay ready and be protected for next turn. But yeah, I was thinking maybe with like the Ursula Deceiver of All card in Emerald, if she, like, sometimes what's really powerful about her is maybe double singing a storm, the Storm Rage on, drawing 2 cards, dealing 4 damage, but then she's usually exerted and is vulnerable to challenges, and opponents will try to take her out right away. But because you don't pay to use the song, you'd still have at least 3 or 4 ink for that turn, since it's your 4th turn if you played Ursula on 3. And so then, you could ready her with this, and then you could get additional value by singing another song, twice. And so essentially you'd be playing like 5 cards in 1 turn, doing that sort of a combo. Mm-hmm. So I think this card, and that's just one application. You can also use this to ready a character that quests for a lot of lore, and then just quests again. So I think, in an aggressive type of deck, that might be a good use for it. In a more control-y Steel Emerald type of deck, maybe using this with that 3-cost Ursula would be kind of cool.
And there's
just lots you can do.
There's another unique way you could use it. Like, I know there's a Tiana card coming out that when she's exerted, and if you go to challenge into their characters, you lose 3 strength doing so. You could actually ready that Tiana so that now you don't get that strength debuff. So, I mean, that would probably be a very rare case, scenario. But, I mean, hey, it's even possible. And you could also ready bodyguards as well on the opposing side so that you don't have to challenge them anymore if there's something they were protecting. So, yeah, this card just seems very flexible, except for the uninkable, part about it. But other than that, I mean,
I think if you slot it into the right deck,
sweet.
You won't have to worry too much about the uninkability, but always a downside, with cards.
And I love the art too. Very cool. Very big moment from the movie. And here is Ruby. I went with Maui Half Shark, a legendary card, and there's a lot going on with this one. So it is 6-cost inkable, 7 strength, and 5 willpower. And then he's Storyborn Hero Deity, and he's got evasive. And then his first ability says whenever this character challenges another character, you may return an action card from your discard to your hand. So that right there could be a lot of value depending on what action cards you have in your discard. Just being able to not only get another card to hand, but maybe reuse like bigger impactful actions. I mean, maybe you've cast a Friends on the other side and drawn a couple of cards, and you get that back and draw a couple more later. Or maybe, you're in Ruby, so maybe you've played a Be Prepared already, and you get another one back from the discard at a different point. And the nice thing is that that's on your turn. So, if you challenge and then grab that Be Prepared out of the discard, your opponent can't like steal it from you or play Pete on you that same turn if they haven't already.
I think against
You can
Emerald
just add it
decks,
to hand and not get it messed with.
if
So.
Emerald decks have made you discard the Be Prepared earlier on, Maui's a way to potentially, fish it out of your discard pile.
Yeah, that feels really good because a lot of decks don't have ways to access their discard. So just to know that, maybe that card isn't really gone for good and that there's a chance to get it back. And I know there's some cards that seem to be based around playing actions in this upcoming set, and some from, earlier sets, like let's say Mickey Mouse Artful Rogue from set 1, or a Minnie Mouse Diver card, I believe, that gets extra lore if you've played like 2 actions in a turn. And, cards like Airfoil, that if you've played a couple actions in a turn, you get to exert and draw a card. I think there's a lot of potential for, an Action Matters deck, and I think Maui would definitely go into that. And then his last ability, Wayfinding, says that whenever you play an action, you gain 1 lore. So I think that's really exciting too. Just, if you have a lot of cheap actions, and you could just have this on the board and gain like 5 lore in a turn, depending on what your build is and the cards you're using. Plus, he helps you recur actions. So it just seems like a good card that just feeds into himself and makes it, even better. So I'm really excited about what this could do, and the stat line's huge too. So the opponent has to respect it, or maybe hold their characters back, and that's buying you time.
And I think the art's kind of funny and in a good way, like
Yeah,
to see his legs exploding out of the shark's body. So very nice job on that.
And moving on.
So I went with Longboat. I believe this is John Silver's Longboat from Treasure Planet. It is a 2-cost uninkable item in Ruby. I guess I picked a lot of uninkable cards.
You sure did.
The ability, take it for a spin. You have to pay 2 ink, and then chosen character of yours gains evasive until the start of your next turn. So I think this is also a very flexible card, which is probably why it's uninkable. If you wanted to play this in an aggressive deck, the ability to give your highest quester, evasive repeatedly, turn after turn, for the cost of 2. A lot of times maybe a deck that's kind of went all in as quick as it could, it maybe doesn't have a lot of cards to play in one turn at the end, so it can probably afford to pay 2, to give something evasive and just make it that much harder for your opponent to interact. Also, in a control type of deck, if evasive characters are popular in the meta, then Ruby decks might want to consider running this card as a way to answer them without needing to play specific evasive characters that maybe have other drawbacks of their own, whether it's, not questing for much or the stats aren't great, for the cost. But this just lets anything become evasive. So, paying 2 to give your Maui evasive, and then he can swing for 6. That would clear, that Tinkerbell that we saw earlier, and most of the other evasive characters in the game, as far as I know. So I really like the potential of Longboat, whether you want to use it aggressively or just kind of as a control piece.
And yeah, if it is in control, like Ruby Sapphire, they do like their items for Hiram. So if it's a matchup where like this isn't really needed, I mean, you can still play it to the board and banish it to draw a couple of cards with Hiram later, and it would boost your Tamatoa as well. So.
And then even, you could protect Tamatoa with it or something. So even a control deck could use this aggressively once it's kind of established board control. And
yeah, I do really like flexible cards, and I think this is definitely one of them. And now we will move on to Yokai, who costs 9. He is inkable. This is the scientific supervillain, Floodborn Villain Inventor, 6 strength and 10 willpower, so a huge character stat-wise, and 2 lore, and then he has shift 6, so you might be able to cheat him out for 6. And then he has 2 abilities. One is Neurotransmitter, which says you may play items named Microbots for free. And playing things for free feels really good. So there is that. And then Technical Gain is his other ability that says whenever this character quests, draw a card for each opposing character with 0 strength. So this, you have to take into account what the Microbots card does, and those help reduce the strength of your opponent's characters. So there could be some play there, or if you have a lot of Microbots in play already, I believe when you play a Microbot, then it reduces your opponent's character's strength by the number of Microbots you have in play, and you're allowed to run more than 4 Microbots in your deck. So if you have, amassed a collection of, let's say, 6 microbots and you play another one, everything gets -7. And so then, that's probably every character your opponent has, most likely.
I think it targets one thing, right?
Oh, just one?
One character when you play the microbot.
So then you would target that, and at least he would quest and draw a card for everyone that was 0. And if you have other ways to, reduce strength, like let's say you're playing this in Sapphire Amber and you played the 5-cost Shift Kita, which gives -3 to everything on the board, then, you might be drawing multiple cards off of his ability. So again, or, if you're playing a couple microbots or a few microbots in a turn, then you could blank out, several characters. So I think the potential, if you get this engine up and running, could be really cool. And then, man, if you had like 10 microbots in play and you drop in a Tamatoa and a Lucky Dime, I mean, that game's ending really quick. So I think it'll definitely be fun to build around this character. And just recently watched Big Hero 6 a couple weeks ago, and very great movie. That was the second time watching it, but yeah, very cool, and I love the art on this card. It's very epic looking.
Yeah, I think this is a really unique combination of effects here. I think it's probably going to take a lot of work to figure out how to make this kind of shine to its fullest potential. I'm wondering if this would work well with Emerald, possibly, if you can get a Clarabelle maybe to help fill your hand up, and then if you can find multiple microbots, start using those to draw additional cards off your yokai.
Maybe even the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit card that is coming in the new set.
I could see maybe trying this with Steel as well, if you can quickly ramp up, maybe sing a whole new world to refill your hand and find some microbots that you can keep playing. And once you do have a stack of these on board, probably every time you play an additional one, you're going to be able to put something to 0 strength for the turn and just help you keep your draw engine up. And so, yeah, I think he's really interesting. I do think it might be a little too much work potentially for the payoff, but I think if there's a way to crack this deck, it could be very, very strong.
And it'll be fun to try either way.
I went with Sail the Azurite Sea for Sapphire, and this is a 2-cost action, and when you play this card for that turn, you may put an additional card from your hand into your Inkwell face down, and then you draw a card. So a lot of Sapphire cards do this ramp mechanic, and I know last set we had Tipo, which costs 2, and is inkable, and before that I feel like the other 2-cost ramp card that we had was 1 Jump Ahead, which is uninkable, and that one puts the top card of your deck into your ink. So that one was nice in that it doesn't make your hand size any smaller. But for this one, what I like about this compared to, let's say, Tipo, is with Tipo, you have to put an extra card from your hand into your Inkwell for the turn, and then it doesn't get replaced. But with this one, and it goes in exerted. But with this card, the ink that you add from your hand, the extra one, comes in ready. And then you also draw a card, so you kind of replace the card you just inked, plus you still have 1 ink available, which could be useful to like play a Popsicle immediately after this to draw another card and just keep cycling. So I think this just helps make Sapphire decks even more efficient at drawing cards, at cycling. And then, later on in the game, this doesn't feel that bad to draw, because at least for 2, you can draw another card. So, sometimes you just need to get 1 card deeper into your deck, and this might help you do that.
Yeah, I mean, the difference with Tipo is just that you get a character in play when you play Tipo, but a lot of the times, maybe his 1 strength isn't doing a whole lot if you're playing a late game deck that's just gonna wipe the board at some point and start fresh. And this would feel a lot better to top deck in the late game.
And the other thing I like about this too is if it is an action, but it's not a song like 1 Jump Ahead was. So if Emerald is popular, this is another card that they really can't take from your hand unless they're playing Emerald Amber with Bare Necessities.
And it's inkable as well, so if you just want to ink this card, you can do that as well.
So I think this has a lot going for it, and I would not be surprised if this very quickly becomes a very popular selection for people who want to be ramping in Sapphire.
Yeah, I wonder if people will play 4 of these and 4 Tipo, or some number of each, or probably at least 4 of these for sure. But
I'm definitely going to try 4 of this.
It does seem like it'll really boost consistency if you're able to run, 8 inkable 2-drops that ramp you right away. So, especially if you're trying to, maybe you run a lot of 4-drop characters or actions to take advantage of, the likelihood that you'll be able to get there early.
And just the fact that it preserves your hand size a little more than like Tipo does makes me even more excited about this, especially if Emerald discard decks continue to be as popular as they have been recently. So
Yes, and now on to the last ink color, steel, and I went with Galactic Council Chamber, Courtroom, and this is a location card. Costs 3 to play. It is inkable, and then it costs 1 to move characters here, and it has 7 willpower. And then it has 1 lore, so you will passively gain a lore right before the start of every turn of yours. And then it has 1 ability, Federation Decree. While you have an alien or robot character here, this location can't be challenged. So I just thought this location seems really cool. It's got the same willpower as the Queen's Castle, which we know has been a very strong location in the past. It only has 1 lore, but it is at least giving you a lore every turn if it's not being dealt with. And then this location actually has a way to kind of protect itself. As long as you have an alien or robot character there, then it can't even be challenged. So, perhaps your opponent isn't running any way to remove locations without challenging. And then, if you're able to just keep a character there, protected or not exerted, just let it sit there, you're going to passively be clocking them for 1 lore every turn. And, that could be really effective if you have the right setup. And I just think, it offers a different way to kind of build a deck and a different concept or win condition to be trying to go for. And I just thought that was really neat.
I think this would slot in very nicely to the Amber Steel Locations deck that just did very well in Seattle. Especially because that deck had John Silver in it, the 3-cost steel. Who he is an alien. I believe he's also is he a robot or is he just an alien?
I'm not sure, but he's definitely got some robotic parts.
So if John Silver was here, not only would he be getting extra lore and extra resistance, but you wouldn't be able to challenge the Galactic Council Chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And for a 3-cost 7 willpower location that generates 1 lore each turn, that's a pretty efficient stat line on a location. So I think that could definitely be a good inclusion if you're looking to play some locations next set.
Yeah, and I mean, there's locations from the past, too, that would be able to be at least played alongside this as well, depending on what ink colors you're using. And there is the Ruby location from the previous set that lets you move to locations for free. So you could easily, jam out a robot or an alien character, put it on that location, and have it rocket over here. And then just kind of stay protected. Or, if you have the board and there's no threat on the other side, then sure, quest away. But otherwise, just the ability to leave the character kind of safe and then just put them under this location pressure every turn. It seems like a cool deck concept. So I'm excited to see what people come up with for this. And lastly...
And speaking of John Silver, here he is. I wanted to show off this 3-cost inkable Ship's Cook version. He's a 3/3 stat line. Storyborn villain, alien, pirate captain. So he is an alien, he is not a robot. Hunk of hardware is his ability. When you play this character, chosen character can't challenge during their next turn, and he quests for 1 lore. So I believe there was an effect kind of like this on a Simba from one of the previous sets. It was either set 3 or set 4. But for that one, you had to challenge, I believe, a character. And if you banish something in a challenge, then you could pick a character and they couldn't challenge on the next turn. I think that's what it was. But
that requires a lot more setup. And
that does require a lot of setup, and your opponent could kind of see that coming. But this one is on play. So, let's say you want to play a really aggressive deck. And I think there is some potential to play an aggressive alien deck this set based on some of the cards we've seen. This card coming down on turn 3, if your opponent only has like 1 good statted character in play, then playing John Silver and saying that character can't challenge might just let you completely quest out with your other 2 characters, and then have them again for the following turn to quest an additional time. And so I think that's pretty cool and opens up some interesting aggressive strategies. He only quests for 1, of course, but I do believe there's the Galactic Federation Councilwoman in Amber that costs 2, and she gives your other aliens +1 lore as well. So, if you played an alien character on 1, maybe, Stitch or something, and then her, and you could wait till it's safe to quest by dropping John Silver on turn 3, and then quest for, 2 with your Stitch and 1 with her. And then on the following turn, you could either go into some bodyguards or just however you want to build out your aggro deck. But I think he's just cool in the sense that, there may be times too where your opponent just has like one Maui in play or something, and everything else that's in their hand, maybe it doesn't have rush, and just by playing this and targeting the Maui, you're just giving the rest of your board more space to quest or sing or do what it wants without being threatened on the next turn. So I really like the John Silver. I know he himself does not quest very aggressively, but this could just be a cool control tool to try in your decks as well.
It's kind of cool art too. It's just looks like he's making some food at a resort or something, which is pretty interesting.
There is a legendary John Silver in this set that can shift, so this might be a decent shift target to use for it if you want something that has a bit of utility earlier in the game and has decent stats for the cost. So I think there's a lot more going for him maybe than it might seem like at first glance.
Yeah, so those were just some highlights that we've noticed so far out of the cards, and there were a lot of other ones we would love to have included and talked about as well.
Yeah, but that looks really fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's a cool Madam Mim card in Amethyst that if you have a big hand, you can discard a lot of cards to gain a lot of lore. There's a Mad Hatter card that seems to be aligned toward a mill strategy, which we really haven't seen too much of yet in Lorcana. A little bit with Whole New World, but now it seems like a more dedicated deck could be built around that. And yeah, I mean, the lucky, Rabbit Oswald card that we have seen in Sapphire looks like that could have a deck built around it, and so many more. We might touch on some of those in, videos going forward, but for next week, we are planning to cover our favorite enchantments from every set, and, hopefully by the time we make that video, I'll be curious to see if all the enchantments have been revealed from Azurite Sea, because then we'll be sure to fit those in to the video as well.
Yeah, and some of the ones we've seen so far are really exciting, and I know they're keeping a lot of cool stuff back too, so we have a lot to look forward to in terms of reveals, I think, in the next couple weeks.
But yeah, the set's coming out soon, and we're very excited for it. So with that, we will leave you until next time, but thank you so much for watching, and until then, happy questing.